I think the problem has been that the utilities themselves are quite well covered in the short term. And they are having to take a relatively short-termist view with all the issues they've had to go through. Ukraine, is it on, is it off on peace? The tariff issues where they're going through. And you've seen that in the buying strategy that's been going on as well. Everything's been very short-termist to get forward. Just make sure I'm okay where I am now. Can I get my EUP? Can I get my, UF6 in? Less worried about the U308.
Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Triangle Investor Interviews. I'm your host Lucian Valkovic, and before I announce my guest, just a reminder of a disclaimer. This interview and all my interviews are not a recommendation to buy or sell any shares, products or services. Always do your due diligence and consult with your financial advisor. And my guest today is Daniel Major, CEO of GoviEx Uranium. Daniel, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Lucian. Always a pleasure to chat to you.
Always a pleasure to chat with you, Daniel. Let's jump on the big news right away. The recent news is transformational for your company. Can you walk us through the strategic rationale behind GoviEx Uranium reverse takeover of Tombador Iron Limited, and how the creation of Atomic Eagle, the new company, positions the company for growth in the uranium sector?
No, absolutely. And I think you hit it right on the head in your question there. It is transformational for us. And I think it's exactly what GoviEx needs to do. It brings a lot of aspects in for us. Firstly, it brings more cash into the company, which is for the development of the Zambian assets that we've got out there. I mean, at the beginning of this year, we did a fundraise. We brought in Manel. So we have a very large strategic investor from Zambia in. But this also positions us well with a peer group that is very African focused. So if you look at where we are on the TSXV, there are 73 different uranium companies on the TSXV, CSE, and in the New York market, of which only 5-6 of them have any aspect of investment into Africa. If you look at the ASX, there are 22, of which 9 of them are all in there, and you get things like Bannerman, DPLO. So there's that part of it, better peer group for us to be balanced against and compared against. The funding requirement that comes in, and then Matador is very much part of that conversation. Matador Capital were very much transformational for Boss and the Honeymoon deposit to come into production. They were transformational for Kyla Carrier to go into Lotus and bring that project. So they brought with them a track record and skills. They're not just an investment capital house. They've got metallurgists, they've got geologists, they've got people who've built projects before. And so we see this as very much strengthening up the pool that we've got here in GoviEx and the skills that we've already brought to it. We've got great support within the insiders, including our Zambian partner, who thinks is great. And I think the company needed a reset as well. I mean, we've been so focused on Madawaela for years, and Zambia's now focus while we deal with the ICSID courts. But that was not coming through in the messaging. And I think this resets us again, transforms us, gives us a new market. The capital markets and that approach from Matador to access capital is key for us as well. And for more importantly, for shareholders going forward, and for our ability to develop the Mutanga project.
Definitely. The transaction includes a significant reduction in outstanding shares from, I believe you have 1 billion shares outstanding, something like that, to 340 million.
Correct.
How do you expect the tightened capital structure to impact shareholder value and market perception of the new company?
Well, thanks for raising that one, because the capital structure did need tightening up, and we were down at a 5 cents. I mean, and it's been an issue raised by a lot of investors in GoviEx that we needed to do it. And it's something that we as a company have been considering for a while, which was a consolidation of our shares. But we needed something to tie it to. Just consolidating your shares for no reason has never worked well for companies that do it. Whereas we always have said, if we can find a transaction to tie a consolidation to do it, we would do it at that time, and this sorts that out. It obviously tightens it up. It brings the share price up. It therefore tightens up the holding and the investment quality that you've got going through, and makes this a much more investable project. And I think, the initial feedback out of Australia from the announcement there has been very positive within the investment firms who Matador and the bankers deal with down there. So, tightening that higher price, all works very well. And this consolidation needed to be done.
Yeah, I got a lot of questions from my subscribers and followers. What will happen to the shares of the people who own them on the TSXV, but their broker doesn't support the Australian stock exchange ASX?
Yeah, I think that's got to be one of the biggest concerns for investors, and for us, what we will do is we will bring back an OTC listing. And most investors in North America can trade on the OTC. Obviously, we have to lose the GoviEx OTC because GoviEx won't be trading. And so we're already in discussions to bring in the Atomic Eagle OTC. It will probably come in, we'll try and coincide it, but obviously there's slightly different exchanges. But the intention is to make sure that Atomic Eagle has an OTC listing, which allow investors in North America to trade their shares.
Okay, you mentioned financial part of this deal with Tombador bringing 10.4 million in cash reserves and additional money you've raised recently. How will the new company, the Atomic Eagle, allocate these funds to advance in the projects going forward?
Yeah, in addition to that, don't forget there's the subsequent fundraise. So as a company that's listed but not
5 to
trading,
10.
it comes in as well. There's that money that comes in as well. And I think that's important to notice that is being put at a minimum price of 28 cents, which I think is the equivalent at the moment of about 6.5 cents Canadian. So it's coming in at a premium to where we are trading at the moment. And that shows the commitment from the Australians to get this well funded. It will focus, obviously, really on where we're already working, which is into Mutanga. We'll continue with the strategy that we're currently going through of trying to add to the pounds there to increase the size of the project, improve the economics, to continue to move the project forward. And don't forget, we filed the ESIA and the RAP. They take a reasonable period of time to go through. So we're using that opportunity to go forward. And obviously, we'll continue to look at our financing options. And I think that's another reason why Matador is so important to us, is that they've already financed 2 projects. It won't make financing any faster. I mean, that's driven by the uranium market more than anything else. And access to capital will be driven by the support the uranium market shows. But really, it will continue the strategy that we've already been on. But I know within the Matador side, they would like to see more pounds as well. And so we've already started that, the drilling out at Kariba Valley, but also the drilling that we've been doing at Mutanga East, etc., to add pounds to expand the existing project to make it a bigger project.
Yeah, I want to. We will touch a little bit more on Zambian project going forward. But before we do that, about this transaction, in the perfect world, when do you expect to close this transaction? Of course, you have to have the shareholder approval, some paperwork done. What are your expectations?
The current security holders vote is planned for October the 24th. So we're currently in the process of pulling together the plan of arrangement documents. They should be out in the middle of September. Get my months right here. Middle of September. And then the vote would be at the end of the month. Prior to that, Tombador will have already had its vote. So their vote is probably sometime before the 10th of October. So GoviEx shareholders will already know how Tombador shareholders have voted. Obviously, a major shareholder, and that has already agreed to vote through. And we've got strong support from our insiders on this transaction as well. And also, GoviEx shareholders will know what the book will look like on the fundraise going through as well. If all of that works, then you would expect GoviEx to delist on November the 3rd. And Atomic Eagle will then start trading on the ASX.
Okay, that's good enough. Let's jump on Mutanga. You mentioned some of the next steps for the company, but can you expand a bit on this and include some timelines for those steps you plan to do over there?
Yeah, so we have filed the relocation plan about 2 weeks ago. The ESIA is already in with the Zambian Environmental Ministry. We haven't had any feedback yet, so we're just waiting for them to feed back to us. We've done various meetings with them. So once we start getting their feedback, we'll start dealing. It normally takes about 6 months to go through this process, and it'll be subject to how fast Zima work and how quickly we can respond to the questions. So far, nothing of note has come to us, so we'll work on that. At the moment, as you know, we've been drilling, so we're already looking at that. I had appointed our Zambian project commissioning engineer as well. His task has been to really go back through the sort of process side of the design and to see what we can debottle. How can we bring capital costs down, and can we increase the size of the plant without substantial increase in capital? So those are all internal projects that are currently going on. We've probably got about 3 months of work in front of us on that side to really just get a handle around it. Because obviously if you can do those things, there's a lot of there are no additional costs if you can just debottleneck it and get the capacity increase, but get additional revenue through. So that's a key part of it. And if we can get that through, then obviously that makes it a more financeable project as well, because we'd bring back down the unit costs that go with it, and a better return would be what we're targeting.
Yeah, Daniel, how do you plan to leverage the exploration potential at the Karoo sandstones, and what role will the Lundazi license play in your broader exploration strategy?
Yeah, I mean, Lundazi is just one of many projects we're looking at. We've obviously got Kariba Valley. We're looking at other licenses around the country, not just Lundazi. I mean, Lundazi at the end of the day was more a kind of experiment to go and have a look on the eastern side of the country. I think we've got a lot of exciting stuff around us where we already are, even with our own licenses. I mean, Kariba Valley, the drilling we're doing there, only represents about 3% of the total license area, and there's anomalies all over it. Even on the Mutanga license, when you go up to the north towards our Chirundu license, it's never been drilled. There's not a single drill hole up there, but we've got anomalies up there, a lot of them. So there's a lot of potential there, and we are looking at other parts of the country as well. So again, I think, that this focus, this new enthusiasm that's, we've been so focused on the project, the new enthusiasm that Matador brings to this as well. I mean, they really like what they're seeing in Zambia. They like the exploration potential, and that's not just the project, but the potential of Zambia is what drew them to GoviEx and what we were doing in Zambia.
Okay. Quick return to the transaction. I forgot to ask you one question, and that is how will the new board membership look like? You have Govind on board, Keith Bose, and Stephen, I forgot the last name.
Well,
Exactly. How will the technical part of the board look like? Can you tell me more about the board?
yeah, so you got from GoviEx, you have Govin and Eric Kraft. Govin, obviously, a lot of experience in Africa, a geologist. Steve Quantrell comes from Tombador. He's actually a civil engineer by training, but an engineer, and has worked mainly in oil and gas and iron ore, but an engineer by background, but with a financial background. Keith Bose was the managing director of Lotus. Is a metallurgist by training, so brings a lot of experience there and has managed companies. And then an advisor will be Grant Davey, the founder of Matador Capital. He'll be an advisor to the company as well and bring his considerable, experience of what he's already done with Lotus and what he's already done with Boss and other commodities. I mean, he's done energy projects and other minerals as well. So brings a lot of experience, not just to the engineering part of it, but also the Australian capital markets, which is obviously very much key to what we're trying to achieve here in this transition.
Got it. Will you add some new people going forward as you move the projects?
Well, obviously, because we can't build a mine with the number of people we've got. Yeah, I mean, look, as we go forward into the next stage, we will continue to add to the skill sets that we need. Where exactly that transition is going to impact, obviously, we try as a company, and GoviEx has in the past, to be as Zambian as possible or local as possible. Let's put it this way, while we had Niger as well. And we'll continue in that strategy. And I'm not going to change that. And I think that's important because you want people on the ground dealing with the issues on the ground. And that ties into the government's expectations and legislation as well.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned Niger. I have to ask about Niger. Arbitration is suspended, I believe, until September 11th. Can you provide an update of the status of the GoviEx Medulla project in Niger? Are there any ongoing discussions with the government? Tell me more.
Well, two things on that. Let's start with the suspension. Yes, we are suspended until September the 11th. Extending that suspension, if we need to, is very easy. Both parties just have to agree to extend this suspension, and we just write to ICSID and say, we've both agreed, here's their evidence that the Nigerians would like to extend, and it gets extended. So that's not an issue at all. And it, part of the discussions. Yes, there are discussions between the parties. Is it fast moving at the moment? It's moving, let's put it this way. I think there's a lot we've got to go through, and there's a lot happening in the country that they're dealing with themselves. We have to make sure that when we recover the Madawaela project, it's in a form that matches or is better than what we had taken away from us. I think the fact that we are in negotiation shows very clearly that we had a strong position in our court case. If we didn't, the government would have just pursued us and continued that conversation in the court. So I think it does highlight, in my opinion, that we have a strong legal position here and that we will negotiate our place here. I think the other thing we have to look at as well is the long-term political situation in Niger and understand that it's still fraught at the moment. And that, we can play this through, and which we're doing. We're discussing, we're negotiating the points that we need to deal with. But also there's no rush for our side. We will get the license back, in my opinion. But in the meantime, we can focus on what's going on in Mutanga. And that option is there, and we've got our foot very clearly on it. And I've had conversations with third parties around, and it's clear no one else will go near it because we have an ICSID filing on it. And that includes, the Russians, the Chinese, etc. And we will come to a negotiated settlement, but it has to be a settlement that works for GoviEx, Atomic Eagle, and our shareholders. There's no point in rushing in, grabbing something so I can put a press release out. We've got to be there for the long term.
Yeah, Daniel, let's say that you don't get the licenses back. Are there any contingency plans in place for Madawaela project, such as sell the technical data for Madawaela and use the money to get the other project going?
Look, we can always sell the data to the other for the project, but at the moment, who to? I mean, there's no one to sell it to. You'd have to actually lose the license, which we don't believe is going to happen. And on that basis, I can pick up the phone to whoever the acquirer is and say, would you like to buy the data? There's a lot of data. I mean, there's 650,000 meters of drilling. There's all the metallurgical test work that we did, everything. So
yeah, the data has big value, in my opinion.
It's got massive value, and it would fast track anybody who's trying to get there. No one wants to go and do all that drilling again. And while you can find the holes, most of them have collapsed over time. So you'd have to do it again anyway. So yes, the answer is there is a value to that. If we get to that position, then we will reach out to whoever acquires it. But as I said, I think we have a very strong position. And I think the fact that we are in negotiation and the government pulled out of the courts to have the negotiation shows that they believe they are best suited to negotiation.
Okay. Daniel, how will the news flow from the company look like in the next 2 or 3 months?
Well, obviously, a lot of it's going to be very focused on what we're doing on the transaction. We've got the drill results to come through. When we've finished all the drilling, we'll present where we are and what that looks like. And I think those are going to be your major two items at the moment. Obviously, when you're doing a transaction of this scale and this result, that's the primary focus of what we're really doing. But at the same time, the field guys are very busy. They were still busy on the ESIA, as I described. We're still busy on the environmental. On the debt financing, I think one of the issues for us is really the market. We need to see the market move. Like my peers out there, no one's going to want to rush out there and build a uranium project at $75 spot. And so therefore, we had a lot of positive feedback on the LOIs. But like all of the LOIs and anyone in this business, you have to have underpinning contracts. And you're not going to get the contracts you want at $75 spot to cover a project. So, if the market improves, then we can go back and continue that work, which we are, we were very happy with what we'd seen. But again, I think this is an opportunity to improve on what we had and make this a better project, more viable to go forward as well.
Understood. Daniel, final question. Actually, that is usually my first question, uranium market. I always like to hear your insights on the uranium market. You always have good stuff to say about it. Give me your helicopter view of the current uranium market and what are your expectations, let's say, in the next 6-12 months for the market.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I'm a total bull on this industry, but I think you have to be pragmatic as well about how things are going. I think it's going to be interesting. Next week, it's the WNA, and they bring out one of their biannual supply demand. I think that people are expecting that to be very bullish. We've seen a lot of announcements in the last 2 years on new builds around the world. Political change has changed a lot on who's building as well and the commitments. And I think the other thing that we're expecting to see is a fairly detailed and expansion on SMR capabilities within the consumption. I don't expect to see a lot of change on the supply side. I think that's going to be somewhat stagnant and probably backwards from where they were previously on that. So I think that fundamental issue of supply-demand fundamentals is going to get wider. And I don't think there's any surprises for that. Hopefully to the upside, though. But let's see where that comes through. When you look at where the market is at the moment, I think the problem has been that the utilities themselves are quite well covered in the short term. And they are having to take a relatively short-termist view with all the issues they've had to go through. Ukraine, is it on, is it off on peace? The tariff issues where they're going through. And you've seen that in the buying strategy that's been going on as well. Everything's been very short-termist to get forward. Just make sure I'm okay where I am now. Can I get my EUP? Can I get my UF6 in? Less worried about the U308. So it's okay. And the market, is in deficit, but it's not that bad at the moment for now. But I think we will always see a price rise in the second half of the year. It is always there. But I think what we're starting to see is the first kernels of utilities now going out further, starting to pitch out and saying, well, how am I going to cover this post-29 into the 2030s market? And I think that is where it's becoming clearer that projects are tough to get going around the world. You just look at them all, and there's hardly one. There's a couple that have done well, but there's a lot of projects out that have struggled to achieve what they wanted to achieve. And then there's projects like our peers in Africa that are holding back and just saying we need better prices. We can't go anywhere yet. So I think we are going to see the utilities starting to look further out. And I think next week coming, is going to be a real impetus to that, and expect the price to move higher. And then as it becomes clearer that we need more, it will go. But so far this year, it's not surprised me. I've been very much internally and even on interviews. This year's going to be always been second half of the year is going to get exciting. Beyond that, it really will get exciting.
Yeah, you mentioned African peers waiting for better prices, and you hit the nail on the head. Actually, what do you think is the incentive uranium price today that those projects can work with?
Well, I mean, they've got to be looking for over 85, probably $90. I mean, we use $90 in our feasibility study. We went out into the market looking for the debt at $80, and that obviously puts pressure on it, and it leaves you no skin. If you get it wrong, then you're in trouble. So I think with these kind of projects, our project, $90 is a much more reasonable number to make these projects work, and I think that applies across the book as well. And you need these African projects to come up. We need the big volumes. I mean, you look at the US projects; they're all small. If you add them all up, they kind of make a mine, but they're all individually small, and you need the bigger projects with the bigger volumes and the pounds coming out to come on stream. So, I was looking at the Chinese import data the other day. Fascinatingly, last year they only imported from two countries uranium. One was Kazakhstan, and the other was Namibia. That was it. And you look at the growth out of China and where it's going on reactor builds, and they're going to need a lot more uranium to meet that. And as we've seen from Kazakhstan, I've said before, Kazakhstan's pretty well capped out. You're not going to get much bigger out of there. The growth for China particularly has got to come from Africa to grow their demand. I mean, you can see a few other places that they're going to find it going forward.
Agreed. That was Daniel Major, CEO for GoviEx Uranium, soon Atomic Eagle. Daniel, thank you very much for joining me today.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.